Once Mr. Lowe is complete, Mr. Giuliani, I'd like you to wrap us up with your closing comments, and then each member will have an opportunity to I guess I'm overruled. There are 4 more people on the list that are still here. Oh, all right. I had called names and nobody stepped forward, so okay. Mr. Lowe, please give your name and what you do, and we're happy to take your testimony.
Distinguished legislators, my name is Mark Lowe. I'm a Maricopa County resident for 30 years, a Southern California refugee. I'm here in the capacity of steadfast, concerned citizen. I volunteered to do 3 days of observation, 2 at the Maricopa County Recorder's Tabulation Center, Sunday, October 25th, and Sunday, November 1. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. Been waiting all day to speak with you folks. On the 25th of October, I observed no ballot tabulation happening. There was simply adjudication. Approximately 12% of the vote of 100,000 votes a day needed to be adjudicated to determine the value or the voter's intent. So I watched that and got a good cook's tour of the entire operation. Everybody seemed to be cooperating with doing their job and being very open and transparent. When I approached the gentleman who was running the Dominion machinery and computer software, and I don't have his last name, I have his first name. I'm trying to get his last name, because I had indicated that I was concerned that using a computer such as that a 14-year-old could hack into the system and change the votes at any point in time. And he kind of laughed and chuckled and kind of just shrugged off my concerns. And I told him that I had just watched a month earlier a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible, where Tom Cruise crawled through the ventilation system and went into a room very much like what the equipment is in, and he was able to get in and get the information and get out. And at that point, he really laughed. He tried to point. He did point to all the wiring that was hanging from the ceiling in baskets, and so that there was nothing plugged to the internet or into walls. Everything was coming from the master sealed up room. And I said, well, in the end, a 14-year-old could get in and hack it. At least that's the world I live in, because I watched the 1969 original Mission Impossible. So a lot's happened since then. The following Sunday, I actually left about 2:30 in the afternoon. I was scheduled to work until 4:30, but I felt that I had better things to do given what I had seen. There was no tabulation going on. So I came back there bright and early for morning shift on 11/1, and I showed up, and the operators were there. Same gentleman that was running the operation. I'll leave him nameless. He's named in my affidavit. And I was able to say good morning to him and said, yeah, I said, I guess nothing's happening with the 14-year-old yet, and kind of made light of it. Sat down, and then a gentleman came to join me, because I was by myself as a Republican observer on the 25th, but on 11/1, Greg, who testified earlier before your panel, who's very, very knowledgeable about software and internet technology, he and I spoke for a few minutes before the process started, and I was able to explain to him how I engaged Bruce the week before, and felt really I just wasn't able to get the information from Bruce or acknowledge what was going on with the process of counting the votes or collecting the votes, because I didn't have the knowledge. Well, it turns out that Greg had more than enough knowledge for this gentleman. I call him the master of ceremonies for Dominion, because he's a contracted third party by the county. He's actually paid by Dominion, and Dominion is paid by the county. So about 20, 30 minutes, I guess, into the operation, one of the smaller, older machines had a problem where it got locked up and it stopped working, stopped counting ballots. And this gentleman, master of ceremonies, came over with his laptop and plugged right into that machine, and he began to immediately do whatever he was doing with the files. And this is when Greg and I sprung to our feet, and Greg took the lead and went over his shoulder and looked exactly what he was doing and asking him questions all along. And he was able to actually get hard data of what was being done with regards to when a file gets too full, it stops, and it has to make subsets and all of that. The questions that I had on Sunday previous is how does he back it up? But I could never get to that point on Sunday the 25th. But on Sunday the 1st, with Greg's expert questioning and knowledge and understanding of what was going on, he took him through the entire process to where how the votes were how the votes were handled, and how they were, when it got to be too big a file, they had to make subfolders. And then the question came up, my whole thing is, what happens if this building burns down? What happens to the information? So with that, along with that question hanging from the previous week, and Greg saying, yeah, he took him right to the point at what point do you make a copy, a data, and how do you make the copy? And from what I recall, and my understanding is that he makes a complete copy of the entire voter file. And at the end of the shift, he leaves the building with it. I say he takes it home. According to Greg, heard him say he takes it upstairs. I talked to Greg one other time, not to compare our testimony, but to say what I remember. He took it out of the building and he took it home as far as I'm concerned. I did not hear him say that he gave it to somebody else or anything. It was all in this gentleman's possession the entire time, because he brought it back with him the next morning. The hard drive came back and forth in and out of the building unsupervised with no oversight whatsoever. Okay. There are some other problems with adjudication, but I'll leave that for another time. I want to say that on my day of the 3rd, when I showed up at 4701 South 7th Street, at 6:30 in the morning, I was greeted by the poll supervisor, who immediately noticed I was a Republican observer and told me that there would be no bathroom facilities for me to use at this beautiful, brand new, multi-million-dollar high school that was built, academy, that there would be no bathroom facilities. And if I had to use the restroom, I'd have to go off-site. And to which I answered, that's fine, I have some containers here, I'll be able to, kiddingly, I'll be able to find a quiet corner and use to relieve myself, whatever. So about 10 o'clock in the morning, and after a very slow trickle of people coming in, because I counted votes until I was ejected at 2 p.m., and I'll tell you the reason for that, but there was less than 200 people by 2 p.m. And so at noon, when I got up to use the restroom at 10, I came back and there were 2 voting machines there. And with a trickle of people, there must have, at that point, there was only at 10 o'clock, maybe 50 or 60 people that had voted. And I was curious as to why there were 2 of these machines and 2 ballot boxes. So I paused as I was returning to my seat, because a woman was coming to put her vote in the machines, and I was going to determine which machine is she putting in. Is she being directed to put it in one machine or the other? And at that point, the poll supervisor told me to get back to my seat or I would be removed from the property, because I'm not following orders and following her direction, specifically that I was to sit in my chair the entire time, which is far away from being able to see anything. So I went back and I sat compliantly, and I was kibitzing with the Democratic observer, talking about life in general. And she kept coming over to me and says, if you speak any more, you're going to be ejected. So I literally, at 12 noon, before I zipped my mouth and didn't say another word, I asked her, so at 7 o'clock, what will happen when it's time to break down the machines and take the votes, seal the votes in a container and take them to the counting tabulation center? And she said, well, you'll have to leave the building. I said, but that doesn't feel right to me, because I'm supposed to observe. That's an important part of the process that I should be allowed to observe. She says, you will be removed by my security out front. There will be nobody in this room except the poll workers themselves, period. So I said, well, that just doesn't sound right. So I just zipped it. I put on my bandana. For the next 2 hours, I sat there in complete silence, counted about another 50 people. So I was up to, at 2 o'clock, I was about 220 people. And at 2 o'clock, I'm sitting there and I'm realizing I'm not going to be able to be here at 7 o'clock, and there's really not much else I can see what's going on. So my time here, I could better serve someplace else. So I noticed that a woman came in with her sealed ballot, mail-in ballot, a Hispanic woman, could not speak a word of English. I speak Spanish, and I heard her say, I have this ballot, but I want a new ballot. I want to vote differently. So she immediately, this poll supervisor handled her kit gloves, right on it, concierge services, because she was the only person in the building at that time. They take her over, give her a new ballot, and they walk her around these 40 or so ballot stations, and they park themselves right to where I could see them intentionally. The the poll supervisor with her back to me, and the translator with a face shield, gesticulating for about 90 seconds. They kept talking to the lady, and the poll supervisor kept looking around the three-sided partition, looking around. I'm thinking, I know it's a crime if I take a picture. I know that. I know it's a misdemeanor. But no one will believe me if I don't capture what's actually going on. So I took my phone out surreptitiously, I put it up, and I took a snapshot, got one, took another snapshot instantly after because the guy kept pointing, gesticulating. I didn't take a movie, I just took two stills, and immediately the pole supervisor wheeled around on our heels and was in front of me in 5 seconds, says, please leave now. If you don't leave now, I'll have security drag you out. You're out, you're gone. And I believe that was her plan all along. She didn't want me there to be watching what was going on at 7 o'clock. She told me it wasn't my place to be there. So I left. I drove to the Republican National headquarters on 24th Street. I got counsel from an attorney there who told me absolutely not. Here's the IRS statute. It says that you are supposed to be there for the breakdown of the ballot, of taking out the data cards. You're supposed to watch the ballots be locked into the box for transportation and then follow them to the place. So I got in my car, I drove straight back down there. By the time I got there, it was about 4:45, and here's this woman out in front with her bodyguard. There's no cars in the parking lot. There's nobody voting. It's 4:45. Polls close in 2 hours and 15 minutes. I had just left there 2 hours earlier. So I tried to get her attention, and the security gentleman told me that I must leave now or he'll have me arrested. So I left, telling her, saying, please look up ARS statute. I was allowed to be there. You wrongfully terminated me. I never would have taken the picture had I had the right to stay till 7 o'clock. That's when I lost my right to be there at 7, I decided I would take the next action, which is to get something, proof that if I'm not going to be here at 7, I better do something because this is a crime. I understand you cannot interfere with people voting. So as a result, after that, I just kind of went home with my tail between my legs, really frustrated that I wasn't armed with the legal statute to have me stand my ground at the polling place. And the fact that this woman from 6:30 in the morning telling me I couldn't relieve myself, I'd have to leave the property, and to stay in my chair, don't walk around. And I understand I had the ability to stand by those ballot machines and just watch people drop them, and not talk to anybody, but just simply watch them drop the ballots in and find out at the end of the night, well, were Republican votes in one box and Democrat votes in the other? I don't know. So that was that day. So then I got a call saying they needed a little more help at the tabulation center, and I got a shift to go Thursday evening at 2:30 till 10. I only lasted about an hour because I asked questions about the process, and I was considered rude by the person who was running the situation for asking those questions. And here's my concern for that, is that there was no tabulation going on, no counting, but they were transferring overseas votes from printed PDFs onto digital screens, creating votes, which would then, I understood, to be later to be printed out and then counted. But my problem with that was that I noticed there was a handwritten serial number on each one of them, and I can't touch it, so I had to wait till they moved it, and then I had to wait. It takes time to figure out about those. And then I went to another station, and it was only 100 difference. Another station, like 3 stations down, and the serial numbers were only off by 100. I thought, well, that doesn't seem right, because if there's 100 in each stacks, that should be the number should be at least 200 or 300 difference. So when I asked the woman, it was my final questions, I said, where are these ballots, portals, where's this being printed? And she tried to make it seem like it was a federal thing, and then she admitted that, no, this is a county recorder thing, and it's in a secure room somewhere, a secure portal room. I said, so it's run by the county? Yes. Who's supervising that? Is anybody giving oversight? No. So ballots are being created, they're printing off of a ballot, and then they're putting a serial number on it, and then they're giving it to people to upload it into the machine. Fair enough, but there's no supervision when it comes out of the printer. What are you printing from? None of that. And then I asked my final question was, is there any way I can find out how many votes were put in for the precinct down at at the polling place 4701 South 7th Street? And she sent one of her witnesses away, and in 3 minutes she came back and said 524 votes were turned in. And I said, no, I don't think that's correct, because between 2 o'clock in the afternoon, again, this is, my opinion, but there were not 300 people that came in from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 o'clock, because I was there at 4:30 and there was zero traffic coming in or out. And I was there for about half an hour till I got booted. That's all my story, and I'd like to say, if I can indulge you, legislators, one favor. I just want to say that I'm completely humbled and grateful to be sitting before you to be able to give this testimony. And I would just like to say to Mayor Giuliani that he has my undying gratitude for his exquisite and epic display of courage and citizenship. And I would very much like to shake his hand if I could. Can I shake your hand?
Thank you, sir.